Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Needs Some Introduction. I'm Victor, your host, and on this podcast, we're watching something along with all of you, usually a TV series, breaking it down and giving you recommendations of other things you may want to be watching as well along the way. In today's episode, I'll be joined by Sona once again, discussing the 5th episode, Murder Horny, of Dexter Resurrection on Paramount Plus and Showtime. This has been a very entertaining season of television. So if you are a fan, even slightly a fan of the Dexter mythology, and you don't need to watch all of Dexter, by the way, all the Easter eggs here really just harken back to maybe season 1 and 2 of the first Dexter, and really does assume that you have watched Dexter New Blood from about 2 or 3 years back now. But even that, arguably, you don't need to know everything about that show. But I think so far, at least, this has been the most successful of these attempted reboots of the Dexter franchise. It just keeps coming back from the dead, just like Michael Myers or that guy with the hockey mask. Not sure why they wouldn't mention Jason Voorhees by name, since this is Paramount Plus and Paramount owns the Friday the 13th films. But Harrison himself mentions that Dexter can't be killed, just like these other slashers, and neither can this franchise. Later this weekend, Darren and I will be discussing the most recent episode of Smoke on Apple TV. A very strong episode of a show that got off to a very wobbly start, and I still have some giant question marks as to what we're actually seeing in that show, but it has been very intriguing. So if you're behind on it and you haven't fully committed to it, I do want to mention that the last 2 episodes have been really good, the best of the season so far, and hopefully it continues to pick up as we come to the end. Before we get to my conversation with Sona, I did want to have a little viewing guide, maybe something I'll do here on a regular basis. So many things become available to stream, and honestly, unless they are on Netflix, they don't get a lot of press coverage or word of mouth. So I do want to shout out some notable films that you may want to catch up on, a bit of a weekend viewing guide, and we'll get to that in just one moment. But before that, just a reminder, if you'd like to support us, the easiest way to support us, just simply recommend us to your friends and family. Are you watching a show and having conversations with your coworkers or your spouse or a family member? Share us with them. Hopefully we'll enrich your appreciation of the show and your conversations. Give us a star rating on your podcatcher of choice. Apple Podcasts is our most popular podcatcher, so give us a review there if you haven't already. And lastly, of course, give us any of your feedback. How have you been enjoying the new Dexter season? Send us an email, needssomeintroduction@gmail.com, or post on YouTube or Spotify. I always forget to check Spotify, but I did see your comments recently, so if you're hearing this, I have responded to you. A couple of listeners that were discussing some of our recent coverage there. So I do always get back. It might take a little while, but I always do respond. So do reach out to us through one of those channels, and I will definitely get back to you. Okay, on to the viewing guide for your weekend. Some suggestions for you. First of all, Warner Brothers has been having quite a banner year. Nearly all of their releases have been very strong performers. And they had 2 very popular and very entertaining horror films that came out earlier this year that significantly overperformed at the box office. And they are both available on HBO Max. Available for about a month now is Sinners, Ryan Coogler's Southern set Prohibition-era supernatural thriller, with Michael B. Jordan giving a magnetic performance playing twin brothers, and a great villainous turn from Jack O'Connell. Performances across the board fantastic, and production design beautiful in this entire film. This isn't a super scary horror movie, so if you've been curious to catch up on it, easily available if you have Max. And practically a musical. It's a combination of quite a few different genres. Once again, that's Sinners. Also available on Max, premiering just this very weekend. Final Destination Bloodlines, this reboot of the Final Destination franchise. By far the most financially successful of this series of films ever, and wildly, wildly entertaining. This is more of an acquired taste, I would say, but if you have any affinity at all, grew up watching any of these Final Destination films, do check this one out. It is a blast, and I'll probably have a little more discussion about it in my conversation with Darren later this weekend. And I'll just shout this one out as well. Not a huge fan of this film. I gotta say, it's quite a nothing burger for me, but I will shout it out because it's now currently available on Max as well. The A24 horror comedy Death of the Unicorn, which somehow attracted a very starry cast: Paul Rudd, Jenna Ortega, Will Poulter, Tina Leone, Richard E. Grant, and others. And I think kind of a waste of such a talented cast. But it's available there. But most importantly, if you do watch that and appreciate it at all, as another one of these eat the rich satires on our current late capitalist moment historically, and also, of course, primarily focused on a satire on the pharmaceutical industry, a much better satire of the pharmaceutical industry, also available on Max, the animated series Common Side Effects, which has been renewed for a second season. If you don't mind animation, this is an adult, not for kids, an adult animation series, and really a brilliant deconstruction of the pharmaceutical industry, but a deeper satire on the culture at large. Okay, piggybacking on some things that are popular at the box office right now. If you are planning or have seen the new Naked Gun reboot, which is getting very strong reviews, by the way, and seems to be a minor hit, not a huge hit, but by the standards of comedies nowadays, which don't even get made anymore, this one seems like it's going to probably be a modest hit. Check out the original Naked Gun series, especially the first Naked Gun film, which is just so hysterically funny. All available on Paramount Plus. Diminishing returns as you continue through that series, but the first one is absolutely hysterically funny. And if your kids are going to go see The Bad Guys, or the families are going to go see The Bad Guys 2 in theaters, also getting very strong reviews, then check out the first film in the series if you haven't. Currently available on Peacock, but also available on Fandango at home. Yet another one of these free, with ads, streaming services. My daughter loves that film. She watched it when it first came out, so we'll probably inevitably have to watch this one as well. It's not bad. It's pretty good, actually. Not bad as far as family entertainment goes. A couple of things that have become recently available to stream that tie into coverage here on the podcast. One is Danny Boyle's Sunshine, the first time that Boyle worked on a film written by Alex Garland. Of course, if you've heard our episodes here on 28 Years Later and previous films as well, Sunshine is a blind spot for many people in Danny Boyle's filmography and has not been readily available to stream in the US. Now available on Disney Plus, and I also believe the Hulu package, so very easy to stream. And if you like very heady science fiction, do check out one of the most stunning, visually stunning films of that era, and still holds up incredibly today. And populated with a cast that is only more famous today than they were back when this film came out. Chris Evans, Cillian Murphy, Rose Byrne, Michelle Yeoh, of course, eternally famous. Hiroyuki Sanada having a huge breakout year last year because of Shogun. Benedict Wong, now in the MCU, of course. And very recognizable character actors, Cliff Curtis, Mark Strong. So incredible visuals, an incredibly talented cast, most of them about to emerge as huge stars. And a bit of a forgotten film from 2007, so 18 years old. But the visuals are not dated at all. This is an incredible piece of technical filmmaking. The third act, as everybody who knows this film, not the strongest part of the film, but up until then, truly a remarkable work of science fiction. And now easily available on Disney Plus and Hulu. And of course, we discussed Mickey 17. If you've been wanting to catch up on that film, by the way, still available on HBO Max from Bong Joon-ho. A bit of a disappointment, that film, also at the box office, considering the massive anticipation of that coming off of his Academy Award win for Parasite. But his first big budget sci-fi film, The Host, is now available on Hulu and Prime Video and Disney and Pluto and the Roku channel and Tubi. It's available everywhere. So if you haven't seen that one and you are a completist, do check it out. Not my favorite of his films, by the way, but definitely worth watching, especially if you are a fan of science fiction. And again, speaking of older films and how special effects have maybe aged badly, this film's even older than Sunshine, 2006. And wait till you see the special effects on the creature in this. Beautiful special effects. Really makes you wonder why special effects look so bad now. I think it's basically because there are so many films that need so many special effects in such a small window of time that the quality of that has actually gotten worse over time. But a visually stunning film and family drama wrapped up in this science fiction premise. A couple more recommendations, things that have become available recently on Amazon Prime. I feel like a lot of people don't actually watch Amazon Prime for streaming, but have the Amazon Prime service, of course. Prime does this incredible thing where they purchase these secondary windows for things that are exclusively available on other streamers, less popular streamers. For example, Nosferatu, speaking of horror films that you might want to catch up on, previously only available on Peacock, is now available on Amazon Prime. So this another recommendation if you're in the mood for more horror after some of these earlier recommendations. But I wanted to mention a couple of things that just popped up on Prime very recently that relate to things we've discussed here in the podcast or films that are still yet to come this summer. First of all, a film that I think is very underappreciated, Only the Brave. This film from 2017 is from Joseph Kosinski, having a huge hit this year, of course, with F1, and coming off of the even larger success of Top Gun Maverick, but he's been making excellent thrillers for even longer than that. And this film from 2017 about a real-life squad of elite firefighters that go and fight the toughest fires around the country, and based on an actual fire. This is an emotional and thrilling and visually stunning story about these brave firefighters. And what an incredible cast. Josh Brolin, Miles Teller, Jeff Bridges, Jennifer Connelly, James Badge Dale, Taylor Kitsch, Andy McDowell, and others. An all-star cast, an incredible production, a huge production, and somehow still extremely underseen. So do check that one out. And another premiere on Amazon Prime, something that I had not caught up with, but very conveniently because I saw the trailer just recently for Nobody 2, Bob Odenkirk as a one-man army. As strange as that sounds, but very convincing in Nobody. The first film is now available on Amazon Prime, and I just caught up with it this very week. I found it to be very entertaining. I liked it better than most of the Wick films, mostly because it's pretty straightforward. This is just a guy who's going through a midlife crisis. All this murder brings him closer to his family and reconnects him with his own joie de vivre. So your mileage may vary, but this was a lot of fun for me. And love seeing Bob very efficiently, very effectively portray this killer. And that's called Nobody. And of course, Nobody 2, just a couple weeks away. That film was actually a hit. And it looks like the scale of the second film is even larger. We'll see if Bob will become the next ass-kicking old dude now that maybe Liam Neeson has moved away from those roles. And one last thing I want to shout out, also available on HBO Max, has not been available for quite some time. I've recommended this film to Sona multiple times. She likes psychological thrillers. This is one of my favorite psychological thrillers and rarely available, or at least not in quite some years. Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. This film was, I believe, Sean Durkin's first film. Recently had a big hit with The Iron Claw. And the reason, or the prime reason to see this really excellent film across the board is the performance by Elizabeth Olsen, which really made her a star. This is how she got her MCU work and became the star that she is now. But a really talented cast. John Hawkes as this cult leader. Sarah Paulson as Martha's sister, Hugh Dancy as the husband, Julia Garner's in this film as well, Christopher Abbott, very talented cast. Brady Corbett, now a director, Academy Award nominated last year for The Brutalist, an actor still at this point. And it's the film of this younger sister who joins a cult, runs off, and is reuniting with her older sister, and how she is potentially a powder keg ready to explode, that this psychological damage that forced her into the cult in the first place may still be a ticking time bomb in this new suburban situation she finds herself in. And interspersed here, the actual flashback of her experiences at the cult. This is not an action-packed thriller. This is all psychological. But if you do like these type of more quiet, meditative, but deeply troubling psychological dramas, do check out Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. And if you are a fan of this film and haven't seen it in over a decade, because it's been rarely available to stream, it's available on HBO Max. And who knows, every time I see this pop up, it disappears a week later. So it might be there only for a limited time. Do check it out if you are curious. Okay, so do expect a August streaming preview. I've done this for the past few months. I skipped to July because there was honestly nothing. July was a wasteland of nothing to watch. Only a couple of things that I happened to watch there that I've discussed openly here on the podcast. But Darren and I will be having that conversation because there's way more things to watch this particular upcoming August, and I'll keep you in the loop with all of that. Check that out. That'll be later this weekend, along with our conversation discussing the most recent episode, a very interesting episode of the series Smoke on Apple TV+. That is to come, but now let's finally get into that conversation with Sona about this most recent episode of Dexter Resurrection. So anything else you've been watching?
I actually have an answer for you because
nice.
Normally I say, when do I have time to watch anything? The new Lena Dunham show.
Oh, okay.
Is it called Too Much?
Too
I'm
Much.
Not sure what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've really been enjoying it. But, It is a series, and here we go back to my old refrain, when do I have time to do this? So I have not finished it, but I've gotten a decent way in, and I think it's good. I think Lena Dunham is so talented, and I kind of enjoy everything she does. So
My wife just finished watching Dying for Sex.
I've heard such good things about that.
Yeah, she was not 100% bought in on it at first. And I told her, oh, it gets better as it goes along. And she watched the finale last night and she was very emotional at the end, as
Oh,
you would expect.
really?
Oh, yes, she was. My daughter was asking, like, what's wrong?
Oh,
It's like, it's just sad, very sad. But yeah, it doesn't go well, as you would expect. But it is very funny until it gets very, very sad, for sure.
mm.
And are you planning to read The Slap? Are you going to do it?
Oh, yeah, I think I should. I still have not recovered the book that I had possession of for 24 hours and then somehow lost in a one-bedroom apartment. So I might as well order a new one, and it does sound interesting.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the series. It's so funny because that book and the Australian series and the American series, even, which is the most recent version of it, is 10 years old. But just because Darren's wife read the book and then they started watching the series. So then I started watching the series. And now my wife has been reading more. So then she wants to read the book. And then I mentioned it to you and you were like, I'm trying to read more. It's like, well, my wife's reading it. You guys can read it at the same time.
Yes.
But yeah, who knew that this book, which is like 16 years old, is now top of mind on the podcast. But apparently, we're all watching it. It's a slaporama. But I can't find. Oh, and by the way, anyone who's interested in watching that, I did find it very good. It's a very interesting examination of just middle class struggles. And I think if you like The White Lotus, for example, it deals with a lot of the same kind of issues, not quite as melodramatically as that show is, but I think very entertainingly. There's a lot of tense scenes in it. And it's about a kid who gets slapped this really obnoxious kid gets slapped at a barbecue. And then everybody's divided on whether the kid should have been slapped or not, and how the parents want to press charges with the police, etc. And some people think that's a total overreaction. Some people are on board. You never slap a kid. So it starts to divide, and these like fractures in the friend group and in these families starts to unearth other tensions that they have, and they're all very relatable things. Like no one's ever had a week like this where everybody has all these things come to the fore, but the barbecue itself is so cringy because I'm sure you've been to a barbecue and you're like, oh, I really don't like those people, and those people always get really drunk at a party, and God, don't talk about that around my parents, and oh, don't do, and you probably had that experience individually. This barbecue is just those things happening. So like, every time you're just like cringing, like, oh my God, get me out of here. How socially awkward is all this? And of course, it all comes to a head with the slap. And then one episode after the other, and the book is written this way as well, one chapter after another. You have a different POV character, and it's like a self-contained story for just that person's story, and has a beginning, middle, and end. But it also progresses the overall trajectory in the background of what happens after the initial slap. So really interesting the way it's structured. And anyway, really good. Oh, and the reason I bring all this up is because I couldn't find the American version. This was made into, speaking of Uma Thurman, by the way, Uma Thurman is one of the stars of the American version of The Slap from 2015, just 10 years ago now. I could not find it streaming anywhere. However, the Australian version is available on the Roku channel here in the US, and I assume around the world, which is just a free channel. Like, the Roku devices obviously are paid, but the Roku channel itself, you can just install the app and stream things for free, and you can just watch it for free if you want to. And it's very good and has recognizable stars in it as well. Not as big as the NBC version was all stars, but this is still a pretty starry cast in the Australian version. And yeah, it's very good. I was surprised. I had only known that show from the memes of the kid getting slapped, but apparently it's more interesting than I expected. And I hear the book's even better. Darren's wife says the book is really good. That's why she wanted to watch the series in the first place. So, and it won a bunch of awards back in the day. So something to read and check out, something old that is easily streamable here in the US now. Oh, and Together is out. I think I recommended that too. I don't know if you.
Yes, I'm fascinated by that one.
I think you should. Yeah, I think it'll. I have these type of films nowadays play in theaters for. Although it looks like it's going to be an actual hit this weekend, but I'm sure within a month or month and change, it'll be available at home. And I think it's very interesting. Speaking of a story about a married couple, which is one of the stories in the slap, but a married couple that is, there's a lot of unsaid things between this couple and this. There is this trauma from, of course, in these horror movies nowadays, there's always a trauma. There is a familial trauma that makes the husband a little emotionally distant, and all these things come together in, no pun intended, in the course of this film, where this couple is basically supernaturally forced to come together. And it becomes a really interesting metaphor for, is this something that you embrace? Is it something that you feel restricting? How do you get through it together? And it's very interesting. It's pretty gross. It's often funny. It's got a really cool mythology to it. Like, sometimes I prefer when horror movies just don't over-explain themselves, but this film does explain itself, and it's very clever the way it explains this phenomena. And there's the history itself, it enriches the story. So I'm a fan. It's a very good horror film, and funny too, like I mentioned. And really, like, the two leads, who are actually married,
Right.
They were actually talking about the fact that they would have to be on each other physically all day long and then go home. And they said to each other, like, I can't imagine this movie ever being made by someone who's not married to the other person.
Yeah.
Like, how could you deal with this all day long if you weren't married to the person? For months at a time, probably.
Well, maybe that's how workplace romances develop, when you are stuck together for so long.
I'm amazed that they haven't gotten divorced after making the movie, but they seem to have a very sweet marriage. So, Sona, before we get into it, I wanted to announce this to the audience. I sent you this link, but if anyone hasn't seen this, you can go to a website. This is a Paramount. It's not a spam website. This is a Paramount Plus website. Diveinto Dexter.com. And you can actually walk around the set of the virtually of a 3D set of the trophy room that we saw, Prather's trophy room last week.
Which is amazing.
Which is pretty cool. Hopefully they'll have other little, I haven't seen if they added anything new this week, so maybe something to check out. I know I sent it to you, and I sent it to Darren as well, who's also caught up on the show, but I want the audience to know about it as well. And just, I assume there'll be other things on that website going forward as well. So, Sona, here we are, the 5th episode of the season.
How many episodes are there?
I think it's 9. Let me double check.
Wow. Okay.
Which is kind of a standard now. I don't know why it's 9. It's not 10 all the time. It's 9.
Yeah, I feel like it would be 8 or 10, actually. The odd number's kind of throwing me.
Oh, it's 10. Sorry.
Okay, so halfway through.
We're halfway. That's right. Audiences are loving this, by the way.
I love it.
By the way, the title of this episode is Murder Horny.
Yeah.
Which, we just seen the title this week when I opened it up on the Paramount Plus app. Because, of course, last week they're like, oh, I have this urge, this building urge, all these different metaphors. And she just comes right out and says, you got me murder horny. So, yeah, so that pertains to Mia's reaction to not being able to murder someone when she thought she was going to. Another good episode for you. You enjoyed this one?
I enjoyed it on a superficial level, but I also enjoyed what I think they're starting to develop about the parent-child relationships here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is interesting, right? We learned that Prather had some familial issues, and he apparently is known as this really good guy because he raises a lot of money for these charitable organizations. We also see, we might as well get this other stuff out of the way, that you might have been wondering, this could just be a silly show, as it primarily is. You're thinking about, well, if Charlie really is disgusted by the work she's doing, then why is she still doing it? Basically, you would assume she's probably paid well so she can walk away, or maybe not. There could be risks to walking away when your employer collects serial killers.
It might not be the type of job you're allowed to leave. But
she seems to be very adept at taking care of herself, so that is part of this as well. But you see that she also has a mother who is in a nursing home and not doing well. So there is that relationship again, this parental relationship that we see represented multiple times in this episode of the show. And maybe these themes developing, for sure, the themes about what is being a good parent or not. Once again, we mentioned that we are seeing multiple times throughout the course of the season, these three, the grandfather, the ghost grandfather, the father, and the son, and the parentage between those things. And of course, you have just the idea, oftentimes, like in this particular episode, the ghost dad is actually giving Dexter good advice as far as
Yeah.
giving his son space. And I actually laughed to myself just thinking, like, where is this coming from? Because it's just a part of Dexter's own
Right.
imagining fantasy of what his father would be like. But even there, going back to the idea of parenting, just having that role model, that figment in his mind, that other voice is valuable to him, right? It's what allows him to operate as he does. And on the one hand, of course, that means that he is a operating serial killer. That's a negative side of that. But I guess on the positive side, it has allowed him to most of the time, not kill innocent people.
It's an interesting idea, though, in this stage of his life, something I haven't really thought about before. Is it how sometimes when you think about someone who's no longer in your life, what would they have told me? And you know
Right.
them
Mm-hmm.
so
Yep.
well that you know what they would have told you. Or is it just on some level, his subconscious knows what the right thing to do is?
Right. But maybe I think that's what's interesting about having the parental figure represented. I think if it was just that nagging voice, you might just ignore it. But having it tied to this is what my dad would say if he was here probably has some additional power to it, or a little.
But do you think that's, I don't know. You know, I have questions about the parenting of Dexter.
Yes.
So
I
when
mean,
Harry gives good advice, I'm kind of like, well, sure now.
but that's not even Harry. That's the whole thing about the conundrum of this. I don't know how seriously. I mean, I think we could take the theme seriously and talk about it, but I'm not sure how seriously we can take what we're seeing presented here, because is this we never know this Harry in the
That's my point.
right. This is just what is coming from Dexter's mind. So maybe Dexter has a moral center. He just doesn't
That
give
is
himself
my
credit for it.
precise point. Yes.
And it is possible that even though this seems out of character, that Harry is being more judgmental and giving these kind of good fatherly advice. We have seen that Dexter did intercede this season as well, to try to intervene or rescue somebody for the first time. And this ghost conscience that he has made a reference to it. So maybe we are seeing Dexter actually grow a conscience. So that would be interesting if this is where we actually end this saga. Obviously not in this season. We're halfway through, so I don't think that's going to happen. But if they do continue this, and I assume that they do want to continue the Dexter character, does he actually grow a conscience over time and have to give up on killing people?
I try and not read too much on forums and specifically Reddit, because I'm on Reddit a lot, about things that we're watching. But after the premiere
Mm-hmm.
of this season, I did see something on there where people were saying, oh, they're making such a big deal about Dexter deciding to save someone. But in
Right.
the Dexter Original Sin, there were, I think, multiple examples of him trying to save someone, but definitely one very big example in the finale. So it's not unknown to him. But to me, the examples were distinguishable from the situation we were in here, but I can't remember why, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. But I just want to say that maybe they have laid the groundwork for him originally having that center, and then he kind of developed away from it, and maybe he's returning to where he started.
This is an intriguing thing that happened in this very episode. I had teased when we talked about the premiere episode. Do you think there's any value in having these parallel tracks of Original Sin and this bookend, like these two bookend series, actually, when you think about it that way, running in parallel, right? You'll have like the second season of Original Sin is coming probably sometime this winter. And then probably the following fall or something, we'll have this season with a second season. And then I'm sure if Original Sin does as well as the first season, they'll have that one. And I was like, well, do you think they'll do something playing with these shows thematically? And is there some value in that? And I'm like, I really don't know how they're going to do that. But what you just mentioned there is possible that you can have this conversation between this version of Dexter and that version of Dexter in these two parallel storylines, especially if they continue to use Michael Hall as the narrator of Original Sin. So it could be him looking back on his own childhood and then bringing some of that into, or not child, I guess his young adulthood, but bringing that into his current storylines. And here we actually saw them use scenes from Original Sin for the first time here in this.
Exactly. And a few things on that. I think when you asked me that, I said, oh, the idea of that makes my head hurt. But seeing this episode, I kind of appreciated it. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But you kind of corrected yourself about childhood versus young adulthood a second ago. But actually, the Original Sin also flashes back to when Dexter was a child. So it kind of covers that whole spectrum of the time that he came to live with Harry and going forward from there. There were two timelines in Original Sin of him being a child and then of him being, like a 20 something. So it is in there. And to bring this all the way back to where we started, I did like the way they tied it in today, and I did appreciate that. And I think it was kind of cool. So if they could keep that going, which I think would involve, someone keeping very detailed notes in the writer's room about exactly what they've said and how they've said it, I like that tie-in. I think it's fun.
Well, it's the same showrunner for this season as the original seasons of Dexter. I forget his name now. Clyde Buckner, I think his name is. He
that sounds right.
Was the original showrunner for Dexter. He left at one point from that show right around the time the quality dipped. And then I think he came back at the end. So you could kind of blame him for the end as well, even though he did maybe part of the reason the show lost its way is when he left the show. But he was the showrunner on all these subsequent series. So on New Blood, which, take that all with a grain of salt as well. But to your point, now that he has this, maybe intentionally having these parallel bookend series allow him to have this generation spanning conversation. So yeah, it could be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I think it could be really cool.
Yeah, especially when you think about showing the dichotomy between him as an adolescent and now his son at around the same age, right? Like, you're talking about these two characters in these two seasons. One is, I guess he's playing 18 or 19. He graduated from high school. It's maybe a year later, his son in this series. And he's right out of college in the other series. So it's like they're within a few years of each other. So that you can imagine them, he can see how his son is not what he was. And that could be a healing in its own right as well.
I mean, this brings us back to how we started with the different parents that each of these people has as that age. And I am not sure they are all that different, but it might be the way they are parented means they turned out differently.
Yeah, so I think that you make a very valid point that this is all going to be developed over the course of the season. However, in this particular episode, the main storyline here was, and I have to say, I really appreciate this, that they laid all the clues out on the board.
So clever.
Maybe I had not been reading the show. I'm not reading it that closely, to be honest. It's not the type of show that you need to. So when I saw the clues that, well, of course, he's going to be the Dark Passenger, there's even that whole shared name, etc., then I'm like, well, how does this tie into everything we've seen? Oh, I get it. He's going to imitate the other guy. That's how he gets into the serial killer club. And then we saw it all there. We said all these things last week. It's like, do you think he's going to kill Mia? He can't kill Mia. Wait a second. Is she going to be a love interest? She does have, that whole revenge against violent men. She would actually be a good scapegoat if someone was going to get framed for. So like, is he going to kill her? Is he going to date her? Is he going to frame her? And I'm like, he can't kill two people. It's too obvious. Well, that the one way you can all fit together is how it fit together this week.
So clever.
So yes. So he does kick it off.
And the watch on top of it, amazing.
Well, I knew the watch was going to come back. They made that big tail. You called out the whole telltale heart aspect of it last week. I thought, well, is he going to go and like kill somebody and then cut them into 9 pieces and leave the body, instead of disposing of it, leave it out there to say, see, I've committed this crime. And then the watch would be something he could plant. And who's going to kill one of the other serial killers? Then he's really going to, so there was this whole conundrum. But the show came up with a very elegant way to do that, which is he doesn't kill Mia. He simply frames her. And of course, she has the biography for it. So it all fits very neatly together. Also, they didn't kill her off. I was like, when I kind of saw the pieces coming together, I thought he would kill her, and then that would be very suspicious. But no, he just framed her. So, of course, they framed her, but they didn't kill her. So she still is in play for the rest of the season
Still
and
kind of
possibly
feel like she
beyond.
might die though, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yes, I have questions about how they're going to use her going forward from this point on. It's interesting they had these big actors and they sidelined them almost immediately. You had Neil Patrick Harris killed last week.
Yes.
The other serial killers who are all somewhat well-known character actors have all been sidelined. And even Prather, who, of course, you get a big star from Game of Thrones playing the role, he only gets one or two scenes during that interview with the real Leslie Stahl. Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes
Yes.
playing herself here, interviewing
Amazing.
Prather. How hilarious is that? It's good to have that Paramount Plus connection.
Huh.
This is why they paid off the Trump administration so Leslie Stahl could
Oh
be
my
in this show.
gosh.
But how do you think, in general, how this whole thing developed with Mia? I feel bad for him a little bit that he couldn't at least hook up with her one time before he just contemplated killing her. But he was a little disappointed. He almost revealed he's slipping here. I mean, I gotta tell you, this guy's slipping. Maybe he's just desperate for some kind of human connection.
I mean,
But
he's known her for like a week. Come on.
exactly. But he thinks, oh, she's a kindred spirit, and he's attracted to her. So he starts fantasizing that maybe this can happen. Maybe this could be like Lumen again. What did you think about the bowling date
It was cute, I thought.
before it got ugly?
Yeah, I liked the banter between them, and they have a cute chemistry. Two serial killers have a certain draw towards each other. So I enjoy watching these two actors together. I think
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was impressed with Dexter's 7-10 split or whatever it's called.
Yeah, that's the most difficult split, but she just needed a strike and she did it. It is interesting that you see that them spending time together and definitely showing them as potentially a couple. So can these crazy kids work it out? Can he just say, okay, I'm okay with us teaming up as long as you do stick to only legitimate serial rapists?
I think she's made it clear that she just doesn't care.
She just likes to kill people.
Yeah.
That's just my excuse. That's just the story that the media runs with.
I mean, that was the craziest part of the whole thing, is that the media just decided to label them all predators, even though some of them apparently were not.
Yeah, they're just like, well, I guess they made the assumption, right? Like after the first few that, and I guess everybody made that assumption too. Like even think about Prather, probably thought that this guy, she did pick him up or whatever, and he maybe doesn't have any kind of criminal record, but he maybe got too aggressive and then she turned on him. But apparently, no, she's just picking up some loser at the bar and going like you'll do. She actually suggests at one point that they do a menage a trois. And he's like, isn't that going to be kind of hard for me to get somebody who's, a sexual predator
Who is also a rideshare driver.
Also a rideshare driver. So it might be a little tricky to get this all to work right. Although I guess they could have had two kills going simultaneously. Then it would have been like a four-way.
Yeah.
But of course, it turns out that she doesn't have all these actual requirements. And he's very disappointed that she does not have a code.
Too.
I was too. I have to say the same. I was hoping that it would be this kismet that they were more closer, more alike in that way, and they had found a connection. And after all this shakes out and all the serial killer club, probably everybody there is dead, except for them. They can run off together into the sunset with their newly formed family. Maybe the son in tow as well.
She has no code. She might kill him one day.
Well, I mean, I'm saying if she had a code. I think that's the disappointment.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes. Hypothetically.
Yes. I think now that's a little, that he put the kibosh on that. He was ready to murder her. He had the syringe out. He's ready to go. He wasn't thinking that out, right? Like, oh, another dead person here? That's going to be a little suspicious. But he does think about it eventually.
Out there eventually.
Yeah, exactly. But at first he's just like, oh, time for a syringe.
He likes to live in the moment.
Indeed. I was going to ask how many women he's killed as serial killers, but I think the first kill, right? Am I thinking back on Original Sin? The first kill was a nurse, right? Yeah.
Yep.
See, I remember some of that show, even though I never finished it.
And he did kill Lila, didn't he? Or not? Is Lila alive?
I think he did kill her, right? He tracked her down in France
Paris?
or something at the end,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, he killed her. I don't think we see him kill her, but he did.
I mean, for sure, not many women, but that's, statistically, not many women are serial killers, right? I
It's true.
mean,
It's true. But actually, the episode itself begins with, the cliffhanger from last week where Harrison is about to turn himself in, and Dexter's like, "We need to talk, but not here. Definitely not here." And drags him off to, where he lives in the basement apartment of Blessing's house. I got to tell you, the whole Blessing thing is just so silly, and I don't even understand. Obviously, they're going to need it for something that's going to happen later in the season, but it just seems such a contrivance. It's like just he's living in this guy's basement. He brings his son there to have this conversation. He couldn't just go to a coffee shop or something. He's yelling about the murders they've committed down in the basement. I'm
I
like,
know.
I don't want the neighbor. I don't think I'd be having that conversation right there.
He did make sure to close the door.
Yes,
I
because
noticed.
like you can't hear anything in those places between the walls. Aside from the fact that it's all taking place in Blessing's house. What did you think about the Harrison trying to come to terms with his dad still being alive and probably not really trusting Angel when Angel allowed him to believe that he was dead this whole entire time?
I mean, first of all, this kid is a million times more likable in
Yeah.
this version of the show than he was in First Blood. What was it called? First
Oh
Blood?
no, New Blood, New Blood.
New Blood. Yeah, Rambo was First Blood, right?
Right.
Yeah, he's so much more likable here, and he is just trying to absorb so much information at once that I can't imagine how your mind could even process everything that's going on. I liked how they tried to touch on all of those things that are happening in his head at once. That, like, first of all, his dad is still alive. Second of all, he's still dealing with the trauma of thinking that he killed his dad and now realizing that he didn't kill his dad. And then here's Angel letting him believe that the dad is dead while knowing that the dad's alive. And he's also being accused of murder. And, all of this,
It's a lot. It's a lot.
it's a lot for this kid. So I like how they covered that. And I liked how he talked about the guilt that he's feeling. This brings me back to something I said earlier, though, this idea of how they're different. Well, I'm not so sure because this kid is kind of bloodthirsty himself, right? We've seen that. And we've talked about before, like, is this some genetic thing that's going on with them that drives them to want to do this? And I think my feeling right now at this point in the show is it is, but the question is how you deal with it. And
Right.
we've said so many times, I've said so many times, Harry could have done some kind of intensive intervention with Dexter to say, okay, I get that you have these urges, but we are not doing that because we live in a civilized society. Instead of thinking the lesser of all the evils is to develop this code and make sure you don't get caught. And we see how that worked out for Dexter. I think, Harrison has a much more normal response, and Dexter's not trying to talk him out of that response. He's letting him live in it and not sanction the fact that he did this, right? Or stop sanctioning the fact that he did this anyway.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that Dexter, being the sociopath, actually allows him to, he doesn't try to pressure him into saying, like, no, you don't understand. You're just not accepting it. Or listen to me, I have a way for you to deal with this. You just have to be more like me. He's actually happy in a way that it's not his psychology. And he's like, maybe not so much like me after all. And he allows him to have that different reaction. He says, I can still help you out, even if, you don't agree with my methodology. So to your point, he's doing something that his dad did not do for him.
Right. So I feel like the urge might be the same in them, right? They're talking in this series about the urge to do this, but I
don't think he has that urge, though. I think that, we have seen him also in the original series. We see him getting violent. So he might get violent, but I think a sociopath is not someone who gets violent. There's a lot of people who do really dumb things when they are angered or when they're triggered in some way, and there's healthy ways to deal with that and not. But being able to murder someone and then methodically dispose of their body and then then be able to pass a lie detector about it afterwards is what makes you a sociopath, right? It's the fact that you can depersonalize the other person.
Yes, but he was also trained to do that in a way.
True, true.
I don't know. Are you born a sociopath or are you made a sociopath? Maybe some of both.
I always thought that you were born, but I mean, I think yes. There's both things actually. There's this book called The Psychopath Test or something like that. I forget what it's called. And the researcher who wrote the book actually wrote the book because he discovered that I think it was his grandfather had been a very abusive man who had eventually murdered multiple people and had spent time in jail. He had no idea about this. And then he did all this research about what they find in sociopathic minds. And there's an actual way you can see that there's an underdeveloped area of the brain. And he was curious to know if he had the same brain. And when he looked at his own brain, and most people in his family did not have this, but he did. So he had to ask himself these questions, like, given a different cultural milieu, if he had been raised differently, would he be a violent killer as well? And so, to your point, it is a combination of both. You probably need to have this deficiency.
And a traumatic incident can certainly trigger that if it's like latent in you,
right?
You know, that might not have. And so there is such a big difference in, you know, that original incident is the same of both of them witnessing their mothers being murdered. Although I'm not sure if Harrison witnessed it or not. That is not entirely clear to me, but I know he was there, you know, but then Dexter made sure he was raised in a very nice, normal way as far as possible, right?
Right.
Whereas Dexter, I think, started developing these urges very early, and Harry, at least in one version of the timeline, tries to teach him to cope with it very early. So I think my perspective is the urge is the same, but the surrounding circumstances are different, and that might be why it's playing out differently.
Yeah, I definitely think there's an aspect of that. And also we have the fact that, to your point, that Harry pretty early on, maybe because he had seen these type of characteristics before, identified Dexter as having these traits and immediately started to try to harness them in a different way. And we see a lot of that in the other version of the show as well. But instead, you have this situation where, yes, Harrison grew up without a mother, but then had like a surrogate mother that raised him theoretically in a more traditional way and didn't encourage any of these negative.
We're calling it traditional now. Didn't encourage his serial killer tendencies.
Yes, exactly. So at least didn't do that.
Traditional values, you know.
Wasn't she a serial killer too, though?
I believe so, yeah.
I believe so. It's serial killers all the way down. In this show anyway.
I don't know. I feel like I'm not being as articulate as I can be. I'm just saying that in my point of view, the essence of that in them, I think it could be that it's in both of them. And that is what I find so interesting about how the different parenting and different influences can make that look so different and how it plays out, even though that initial urge might be the same.
Yeah, it's a nature and nurture question for sure.
Right, exactly.
And I think we'll have some more examination of that. I think it's interesting, or I think it's correct for you to bring it up now at this point in the show, because I think Prather's backstory is also going to tie in with this. He grew up with this, you know, had some trauma in his youth as well, and grew up around other potentially very damaged children. And I guess on the surface, at least, is trying to improve their circumstances. But who knows? Maybe he's like, we may be training them all to be serial killers. Who knows what the situation is there? But I'm sure that it'll be something that'll be explored more as we find out more about these characters. And I mean, we're only halfway through the season, so.
Right. But I like, to get back to your initial question, bring it full circle. I liked everything about that scene in the house. I thought it was very well done.
I also like, you know, speaking to this actor rubbing us a little bit less the wrong way in this particular episode, season of show, that when Dexter actually mentions the whole thing about Trinity and how he had admired him, now he had this family, and then he had not even realized that he had killed or had already killed Rita at that point, Harrison's mom. So that was interesting too. Like, once again, bringing up Trinity in and of itself is again, tying into these very themes about somebody who present themselves as a family man, and then the different perspectives on it, like the different ways that these people can deal with this. And I think that ties directly into the ponytail killer character, which I would presume is going to be the next character we do a deep dive in, because that's again going to be this other family man type situation, another metaphor for how do you be a dad and do this at the same time.
Mm.
So maybe he's the one that we will, these kind of ghosts of Christmas past that he's exploring through each one of these killers, that maybe this is, that'll be the next one. Because that's his bio seems to be very similar to Trinity's.
Yes.
What do you think about that interesting point as well when he's saying that Mia is inviting him to kill with him in this menage a trois, supposedly, and his dad being like, well, you've killed with other people before. And he's like, yeah, but they were amateurs.
Yes, I thought that was so funny because originally when he seemed like it was a novel idea, I was a little bit annoyed. Like, what about Jimmy Smith's Dexter?
Right.
But so I was happy they addressed it.
Yeah, so at least they haven't forgotten their own history here on the show.
Right.
But then, of course, this is when Harrison's telling him about the telltale clock that keeps ticking in his mind, the watch. That's when he gives it to him. I'll leave you of that. And of course, that's where he knows Dad's there to help him out. When we get to the end of the episode and the investigation moves away from Harrison after this planting of this evidence.
Yeah, I'm not sure staying alive is going to let it go, but maybe.
I don't think she's going to let it go either. This still is, when you think about the investigation, this is still going to be so suspicious. She's already looked into him, what happened back in upstate New York, and him being a hero at the school. Angel, we saw meeting with them before. We assume he has explained that Jeff Lindsley is actually Dexter, and that Dexter has the profile of being this killer. And now there's another serial killer dragged into this. I mean, once again, could you imagine that you're like, his dad, his explicit dad is a serial killer, and this is how he kills people, yada, yada, yada. And all of a sudden, another notorious serial killer turns out to be the killer in this regard. What? How many notorious serial killers are just going to accidentally be involved in my case? There's no way she's going to let this go. She's going to be like, hold on a second. This does not make sense. And she knows Dexter's around. So she has not brought it up at all to Harrison. I think she needs to play dumb. She's not letting Harrison know that Angel's talking to her, but there's no way that she's not thinking these things. Her partner seems to be sold on this, though.
Yes.
I'm also very curious that the watch being found among her things, her trophies, is something that is in the news, but at least in the moment when Charlie goes to talk to her at the end of the episode, this is Mia I'm talking about, that Mia doesn't seem to react to that. Either she hasn't gotten the news yet, because the second she finds out that that other guy, the watch, is in her collection, she's going to have a lot of questions as to how that watch got into her stuff.
Good point.
And I think that's going to have to go back to Dexter, right? She's going to have to assume, whether she doesn't know he's Dexter yet, but she's going to have to assume that guy is the guy who killed this other guy, and he planted this watch.
I mean, he's certainly the most likely person to have done it, I assume. I don't know everything she's been doing during her time in New York, but it seems like it.
She killed so many people she forgot. Maybe I killed him. I don't know.
She went on a spree.
He could have been one of those guys. I don't know. I don't remember taking a watch, though. I mean, she has to assume it's somebody in the murder club, right? Like, who else would be doing it? Someone would have to watch her, go to her place, know where she lives, and put the watch in there, right?
Right.
So who else could it be? Also very interesting that she's not very careful with this murder contraption she has. How does she's visiting New York. How does she have that? I guess you could get it from there are probably sites where you can get some of these devices, but it's just very funny that she has this guy like crucified in her middle of her living room with the lights all on. Like anybody, I mean, I'm sure you have looked out your window and has seen your neighbors, wandering around their apartments naked. There's so many stories about, someone seeing somebody fighting with their kids or something embarrassed that you happen to watch. These are people you've never spoken to. You have no idea what their names are, but you have seen them many times because you live across the floor from them in your apartment buildings. She is Not a New Yorker, obviously, because if he hadn't called somebody, somebody would have called somebody. I mean, you might just be watching because you're like, "Oh, something kinky's going on over there," and then she breaks out the knives. Yeah, and then we get to the end of the episode, we see that Angel sees this breaking news. Interesting, this is breaking news like all over New York, but he sees that everything's worked out perfectly as far as the setup. Mia, is being seen as this vengeance killer, Lady Vengeance, and that she is framed for this, and so that takes the pressure off of Harrison. I like he just has a little smile on his face, like, "Oh, Dad's looking out for me." And this is like enough to reconcile him, where he goes to visit his dad again.
That's love.
Back at Blessing's house. Blessing, is keeping an eye on him, isn't asking him, "But now your son is here? I didn't know your son was in town. You should have mentioned that earlier." Or did he mention that? Maybe he did mention that earlier to Bless. And of course, we have Charlie, who Prather a little intimidating here when she says, "Look, it's tough." She's like, "In maximum security, I can't visit her." And he's like, "I hired you to make these my problems go away." So a little bit of an intimidation there. But she does get in there for 10 minutes to see Mia, and Mia promises that she's not going to spill the beans on anything. But like I said, I wonder if she's doing some calculation as to who was the person who framed her. Because you might think that she would reach out to Charlie and warn her that, "Look, I was framed for this." And there's a very small pool of people who could possibly be responsible for that framing.
Maybe, but I also thought that maybe Charlie was going to kill Mia. Didn't you think?
I mean, yes. I mean, not at that moment. I mean, but
Yeah.
it is possible that something could happen in the prison. Stuff happens all the time. But she's probably not going to be in the common area. They're going to Jeffrey Epstein her. But it all remains to be seen. What do you predict for next week?
Oh gosh. No predictions, but it does make me nervous that Dexter is going back to this slide box. It got him into so much trouble last time.
Oh, good point. Yeah, and that the new slides don't even fit. Well, that was ad hoc. So, but he's gonna have to sand it down or something.
He's gonna need a bigger box, he said.
Or a bigger box. That's true. I mean, if they're all going to be these misshapen glass pieces.
What are your predictions?
Just like I said, I think that they're going to continue this storyline of this investigation of this being a serial killer and a family man at the same time, and then the main serial killer character there. And I'm sure Prather is going to be more involved as well. Very curious to see what activities these guys do together. It's too bad that Mia's in jail right now because it changes the dynamic. It's just going to be 4 guys. I guess Charlie will be there too, but Charlie seems to be out of the way during the serial killer activities. She's just there in case of emergency, break glass, and Charlie shows up.
Well, like I said, statistically, most serial killers are men, so.
It's true. Charlie is probably a serial killer at this point, considering she's killed off these other guys. So it's possible she's had to kill off these fellows before. Mostly fellows, anyway. All right, Sona, thank you again for the conversation.
Thank you.
And we will see what happens next week. Next week's episode is called Cats and Mouse. Cats and Mouse. So interesting.
I hope we get more Dexter eye rolls.
Yes, we'll see. If one of the cats tries to catch him, I'm sure he will
love that.
Roll his eyes. Very much looking forward to it. Very entertaining. Audiences are loving this, I think. And the initial ratings have come in very strong. And I assume that this show is going to pick up viewers as it progresses. We'll keep an eye on that too as we cover the show. All right, Sona, have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Take care.